Hi everyone, welcome to the Every Australian Counts Community Forum on the NDIS Bill before the Senate votes. We're keen to hear from you, and we're also excited that we have had an acceptance from Jordon Steele-John, who will be arriving in approximately 15 minutes. But before I go any further, I want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we are meeting on today and pay respects to elders past and present, and also to any Aboriginal people who are here with us today. I also want to acknowledge all of the disability community, our advocates and our allies who have worked so hard over the years, over many, many years to advocate for our human rights and to enable the establishment of the NDIS that we all continue to fight for and protect. A few housekeeping matters. We have two Auslan interpreters, Kelly and Iran, and also a captioner. You can show or hide captions using the button in the menu at the bottom of your screen. I hope you can find that. This forum is being recorded. The video and the audio may be shared publicly on our social media for others to watch later. If you don't want to be recorded, please keep your camera off and feel free to use just your first name or nickname. If you plan to speak, but do not want your comments to be shared in the recording, please tell us in the chat before you speak. If you leave your camera or microphone on, we will take that as your agreement to be recorded and for the recording to be shared as described. We really want to hear from you. Please feel free to use the chat box for comments or questions, and there will also be time for people to speak in the Q&A session halfway through today. I think that's all of the housekeeping matters for now. So, before we welcome Senator Jordon, I'd like to let you know that we have invited every senator and the NDIS minister and the opposition minister for the NDIS. However, only Jordan accepted and was able to attend. Senator Payman was intending to be here today, however, had some childcare issues that prevented her from being here. So we look forward to hearing a lot from Jordan today. He will have a lot of time to share with us the insights on what's currently occurring to the NDIS bill and how we can continue to advocate for the rights of people with disabilities. On that note, now would be a good time to share with you some of the key areas where we have been advocating on. And I'm going to ask Amber to put up our submission just for a moment. And I'm going to ask Ross and also Muriel from our steering committee to say a few words about the issues. We're going to have a conversation about the key concerns about the bill. So, can I start with you, Muriel? Oh, I think you're on loop.
You hear me?
Yeah,
Yes, good. Thanks, George, and thanks everyone for coming along today. And thank you to everyone who's made a submission on this bill. We know that there was a really incredible community response, over 4,500 submissions at the last count that we've heard of. So well done to everyone who took the time to do that. So every Australian Council did make an original submission. We've since made another submission and just got that in just last week, as well as appearing at the inquiry. There's lots of concerning, I guess, aspects to the bill that we've all been talking about for weeks now. I'm happy to kick off and mention a few that every Australian
yeah,
Council have been worried about. Yeah.
yeah. And I think that the biggest concerns are the ministerial determination, which are really quite wide-sweeping. And it's a fancy word for saying that the minister can override the reasonable and necessary needs as identified for that person. And we've seen that the current bill is planning to cut funds by 50%. And that for community participation, they can also cut funds in other areas through Section 33, which talks about funding caps and support ratios. Did I say a bit about that, Muriel?
Um,
George,
Yeah, so absolutely. The Section 34 ministerial determinations are concerning because they really depart from, I guess, some of the core intentions of the NDIS as we've known it to date. So that will mean that changes can be made to plans without an individual assessment of circumstances. So it'll be these ministerial determination cuts that come from Section 34 would be blanket cuts and applied to everyone. So, of course, that's a real concern to every Australian council because we support the individualised nature of the NDIS and of planning. And I guess there are other sort of big changes in the bill that relate to that too, like Section 31, that sort of really moves away from that idea of the NDIS being so strongly individualized. So, of course, yeah, for EAC, that's a big concern.
Yeah. And you can see this on the screen now that in our submission we talked about that when the work and the very powerful advocacy in our community did that led to the Greens supporting and getting across the line some amendments. And those amendments are, important, but they don't address all of the key concerns. We've outlined those in our submission. And as we have already said that there's Section 34A that kind of to fund hidden below, there's this need, there's Section 33, CEA, and CEB, which are around imposing caps on the intensity, frequency, duration, and participant ratios. And what that means in plain English is that if you're assessed as needing a one-to-one level of support, or a certain analysis report, that the minister can make a ruling that says that that people will receive a lot less than what they need. Is that fair? Is that to describe it that way?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good description, George.
George, it's Ross here. I think the overall part, and everyone can see it on screen, is what the current amendments don't address. But also our fundamental position still hasn't changed, and that is that this current bill can't pass in its current form. It still needs significant amendments to be made if it was to pass. And I think we've pretty well articulated those all the way along in our first submission, and we've articulated those again in our supplementary submission. And that's certainly backed up by the whole community we're as mad as hell at the moment with the way the bill looks. We don't think it's good legislation. We think it's going to cause harm. And we want to ensure that we protect those participants that are in the scheme, but also those that may want to enter the scheme. I mean, that's the other diabolical part of where this legislation's running to.
Yeah, that's right. So there's also proposals around functional capacity assessments that, we haven't seen exactly what they will look like, but this regulation will enable the government to cut, hundreds of thousands of people off the NDIS before there are any foundation supports. And essentially, there's this view that some people don't need the NDIS and that they can get supports outside of the NDIS, and we haven't seen these supports established, have we, really, Ross?
No, correct, George. Ross here again. It's still a patchwork of where things are at. Even if we start with Thriving Kids, I mean, we're not seeing where the states and territories are really running with that. They certainly don't appear to be in a position where it's going to launch out in October. And then foundational supports are even further behind, which is our other problem with the whole setup of how this legislation and scheme will roll out. Look, the government's given assurances that nobody's going to be taken off the scheme until those supports are in place, but we don't even know what those supports are at this point. And we haven't been involved in the design, and I think that's the other critical issue, is that they're going ahead with doing things. The department's working on stuff and others are working on things. They're not involving us, and that's people with disability, in the decision making on what's going to be provided. What level will it be? Is there going to be a similar rollout across all states and territories? It doesn't look like it. It looks like we're going back to the old patchwork that we had pre the NDIS, where we're going to have the various jurisdictions doing whatever they might want to do, and it's not coordinated. And that's going to be a significant problem for everybody.
Totally. Thanks, Ross. Well, we're going to talk more about the changes to the proposed in the NDIS bill in our conversation with Senator Jordon Steele-John, who I believe has arrived. So we're going to spotlight Jordan now. Let's just do that now. Thank you, Ross and Muriel, for that important conversation. Hey, Senator Jordan, welcome. Thank you.
Hello.
So we're very grateful to have you here with us. You're an incredible advocate and supporter of the disability community. I really appreciate you joining us. You can see all the ones in the room with all the hearts and applause. So thank you for joining us. We've got some time now to hear from you. We're really keen to understand what's happened to the NDIS bill since we last met about 6 weeks ago. A lot's happened, and I think that your a great person to tell us what's happened and also what is going to happen now that the extension has occurred. And I just want to hand it over to you to fill us in.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, George, and thank you for inviting me once again to share some time with everyone and for the incredible work of EAC through the course of this campaign. Without this organization, I think it would have been so much more difficult to bring to the community's attention the danger kind of posed by this bill. And I know it's really, it's difficult, intense work that you and Muriel and everyone at EAC does. So thank you very much for continuing to put in as much as you do. I'm going to be as brief as I can answering your questions, and then we'll go to a broader discussion. So, what's happened since we last met? Well, since we last met, we as a community had a moment of real success. The government, it's worth remembering, the government wanted to ram this bill through in the last sitting of Parliament, and they wanted to do it at the same time as a bunch of tax changes and kind of have it done. That was their plan. But because of the incredible pressure that the community applied, making over 4,500 submissions, turning up and giving such incredible evidence to the 3 hearings that were eventually held, basically this bill today is friendless. Absolutely friendless. Nobody that appeared before the inquiry supported it. Some of the people the government banked on supporting it pulled their support. And the inquiry was extended and the bill was prevented from passing in that last period of Parliament. We, as the Greens, also managed to secure a number of amendments to put some firewalls between government power and communities' funding, and to remove some of the terrible parts of the bill. And it sounds like Muriel's covered those in detail just before I got there. Is that right, Muriel? You went through the amendments?
Not fully. We just had a very brief chat. So feel free to go through them, Jordan.
Okay, well, very briefly, what we managed to achieve is a couple of key things. First of all, with the cuts, the power that the bill gives, and it's a good opportunity to bring us back to what does this terrible bill do? So one of the awful things that it does is give ministers in Canberra the power to unilaterally cut people's funding. The funding that they rely on. The government was focused on having this power to cut plans across the board, all areas of funding. And so the first amendment that we managed to get the government to agree to was one which restricts that power to make unilateral funding cuts to only basically 2 areas of people's funding, with the rest left intact. So things like supportive assistive technology, consumables, all areas of funding that are not capacity building and social and community participation are protected from that ministerial power to make cuts. So that was the first thing. We kind of put those firewalls around everyone's areas of funding in the different parts of plans. Then within the areas the government insists on having this awful power to make those cuts, we also won some carve-outs, meaning that they cannot cut those social and community participation supports where they relate to critical disability related health supports or employment supports. So we got that as well. We also managed, so that's in that area of that unilateral cutting power. It's important, though, to say that that still leaves an incredible amount of damage, harm that can be and will be done by this bill if it passes, because the government can still cut unilaterally social and community participation supports if they relate to going to the shops to get groceries or going to a university and getting a degree, or literally going outside for any other reason than for a disability-related critical health support or for something to do with employment. We negotiated and pushed very hard to broaden that out, to force the government to go bigger in the protections, but they would not. So there's still extraordinary harm that can be done by those powers. Another thing this bill does, another thing Labour's bill does, is give the government the power to put in place basically a requirement on disabled people to demonstrate that we have cured ourselves before we are able to access the NDIS, or done everything that we can to cure ourselves before we can access the NDIS. And they've been very explicit about the fact that this is regardless of whether the treatments or procedures are affordable or accessible or appropriate for our circumstances, which is just, it's one of the cruelest parts of the bill. What we were able to do was negotiate an amendment which does now make it clear that a appropriate treatment, which is the language the legislation uses, cannot be a treatment which is a restrictive practice. So kind of for instance, a medication that may be may be enforced on the individual to take, and it must be a treatment that is available in Australia under the Medicare system. Now, those are good clarifications and safeguards to have inserted. I'm glad we've got them, but it leaves so much that they could still consider to be an appropriate treatment. So they can still, even though these amendments are passed, require George to undergo a procedure that is technically only available in Western Australia in the months of November through to February. And the fact that George lives in Victoria and wouldn't be available for that time is not relevant as to whether the treatment is appropriate under the system. We've also heard that this could have massive flow-on implications in terms of disabled people who might have caring responsibilities as parents or carers for other family members or other people in their lives. Say they are up for getting a treatment and can afford it, though many of us can't, but simply can't take time off for the 2 to 3 month recovery time for the operation that's required by the government before you get access to the NDIS. In that situation, the fact that you don't have time, you can't take that time because nobody can look after your kids or nobody can look after your grandparents, that's irrelevant as to whether it's considered appropriate under the legislation still as we sit here today. So we've got some amendments, but there is still no doubt, and I want to be really clear about this, this bill in its form that we have it today will do harm to disabled people. It will result in the removal of up to 300,000 people from the scheme. We have seen powerful evidence given to the damage that it will do to people's lives, even in its current form. So that's where we are in terms of the amendments. That's the risk still posed by the bill. Where are we in terms of the campaign to have this thing chucked in the bin? And what is happening with the Senate inquiry? Well, we managed to win an extension from the government in our negotiations so that the inquiry was extended to the 14th of August. That gives us some 20, I think we're about 20 days away from that date. So 20 days between now and the 14th of August. After the 14th of August, the bill can start passing. I've also managed to negotiate 3 additional hearings where the Senate committee will take evidence from witnesses in person, in addition to the kind of additional written submissions that we've had from community members over the past couple of weeks. And those 3 hearings will give us more opportunities to hear directly or give platforms to community members and organizations to speak directly to the impact of this bill on our community and to continue to build momentum to have it scrapped. We've got a very, I think, very interesting, very useful series of witnesses that are going to be giving evidence to the inquiry through those 3 hearings. I can't confirm who they are yet because the programs aren't public, but it's looking good in terms of the people that will be giving evidence. Those hearings will occur in Canberra and in Perth. But the bigger picture beyond the evidence that we will gather is this, and that is that this bill is irredeemable. There is no part of it that is good. There is no part of it that is needed. And our benchmark as the community should be, would this bill make the lives of disabled people better or worse? And it is really clear that it will make our lives worse. And so our number 1 goal must be to have it thrown in the bin. Now, to achieve that goal, we need the Liberal Party and the National Party to be willing to vote with the Greens to have the bill either voted down or delayed in its passage. And this is where we come in as a community, because I saw somebody in the comment section there ask, where is the Liberal Party at? So, and this is the last thing I'll say, and then we'll go to questions. We have done a really good job in pulling the Liberal Party from their natural position in relation to this legislation, which is, yes, let's pass it. That would have been their, this bill, though far crueler than anything the Liberal Party ever dreamt up when they were in government, is something that they kind of instinctively, the leadership, would have probably supported. However, because we did such a good job at applying that community pressure and explaining the harm that could be done, they've moved from support to we've yet to make up our mind, which is a significant achievement to get them to that space of an open mind in relation to the legislation. So now the goal is, in the next 20 or so days, to reach out to them as much as we can to persuade them either to throw the bill in the bin or to slow it down. And basically say to the government, you've got to go back to the drawing board. You've got to go back and do your homework properly. This legislation is not passable. And so that's what we can do over these next 20 or so days, through phone calls, through emails, through rocking up to their offices directly and sharing the harm that this bill will do. And there's no doubt many Liberal and National members have bought into this idea that the NDIS costs too much and we've got to do something and all this kind of stuff. Now, we all know that a lot of that is nonsense, that a lot of it is scaremongering from the media, that the bill that we have in front of us right now does nearly nothing to address fraud, and that the cuts that are within this legislation fall overwhelmingly on the shoulders of disabled people who are the victims of the fraud, and will remove the basic supports that we actually need to live. And that if there is more funding available or needed for the NDIS, maybe we can make the gas companies pay their fair share of tax, or potentially ask the Defense Department to come up with a plan to buy a few less nuclear submarines from Donald Trump. That would give us all the money we may need to fund the NDIS properly. But even in a world where the Liberal Party won't go that far, there is no doubt that this bill and these cuts go too far and too fast. They will leave too many people in danger of harm. And quite frankly, they will cost too many people their jobs. We're talking about tens of thousands of Australians and Australian businesses losing the funding that either enables them to operate or employs them directly in the form of support workers who are with people in the community when they are going to do their grocery shopping or attending university or meeting up with their friends and family members. These are people's jobs. And last time I checked, the Liberal Party was quite pro-Australian jobs. So there are quite a few conversations that we can have compellingly with Liberal MPs over these next 20 days. Yes, we need to reach out directly to the senators who will vote, but my read is that the ultimate decision maker here here is Angus Taylor. And so we need to be speaking directly, those of us that can, either through email or phone call. If you live in the electorate, most certainly, you need to be reaching out to him directly and saying, you need to stop this bill, and you cannot let it, pass very quickly after the 14th of August. You've got to listen to the disability community, otherwise you will lose your job at the next election. So that's our moment to create pressure and to build momentum. That's my focus over the next few weeks as well. And we'll be providing more resources to enable the community to have those conversations and to apply that pressure effectively. But EAC's done such a good job already in putting together the do-gooder tool that you can use to contact Angus and the Senate Liberals over the next couple of weeks, and I really encourage you to do that. So at this point, I'm going to stop here and we'll go to questions.
Amazing, thank you. And just to remind people, and just to clarify also, you're saying that the efforts to go to the coalition, to the Liberals and
Yes.
the Nationals, is there any? Because I know that there are people out there who want to do everything that they can. Is there any benefit in contacting our local members who might not be coalition or Liberals? Like, obviously the Greens are on our side, but can we
Yeah.
influence the ALP at all, or is that just a waste of energy right now?
Oh yes. So no, influencing. This is a good point of clarification,
Mm,
George. I thank you for this. So our goal, obviously, is to influence the government trying to pass this legislation, right? But the ultimate expression of that influence would be the moment that they drop the bill. What I'm sharing is my read on the best way to influence them, which is to get their opponents to officially withdraw their support, or to say to them very clearly they won't help them pass the bill quickly. If the coalition make that position clear, then that's the ultimate influence point on the
mm,
ALP. Because if they don't have coalition support, then they won't be able to pass a bill like this. They would have to come back with something else that might have chance of getting Green support or somebody else's type of support. So the most effective way is to persuade the Liberals and the Nats, whose shifted position then persuades the Labour Party, if that makes sense. However, if you do live in a Labour seat and you would like to contact your Labour member, of course you can do that. But I would put that at the bottom of your priority energy spoons list. Once you've spoken to Angus's office, and once you've contacted the Liberal senators, and maybe then once you've spoken to people on the crossbench, then if you really want to, you can also contact the Labour people and do that piece of work. But they would be at the bottom of the list because at the moment they are in kind of individual members, I should say, beyond the Prime Minister's office, are in just a kind of like a lock-in behind the leader mode, you know. And it's the pressure elsewhere that will
mm,
lead to them shifting their position. I'll put a caveat that on that though, which is that people have done a really good job, I think, in making sure that the comment sections of nearly every Labour post that I've seen have been
mm.
full of people sharing their concern about the bill. And I think that, that does have an impact. I don't think Mark Butler's been able to post anything for the last couple of months without the majority of the comment section being concerns about the bill. And that does have a flow-through impact. But it's the coalition that's got to be our priority because that's the best way of shifting the government.
Okay, let's start with us, Amber now. Can you put in the contact details for Angus Taylor? And we're all gonna call Angus Taylor um, today and tomorrow and give his electoral office a bit of a busy time answering our calls. So let's all do that. There's also the do-gooder. So we'll put that in the chat as well. Thank you. We've got lots of hands up already. I'm going to start with Sam. Hello, Sam.
Hi. I am getting lots of messages from people who are too scared to speak out. Can you speak about this?
I definitely can, Sam. I think it depends what their fear is and why. So I'll answer, with the most common ones that I hear. So first of all, I hear um, members of Parliament that share the concern about the bill, but don't want to speak out for fear of their future political consequences on their careers. And I think it's really important to remind those folks that disabled people vote. And regardless of whether this bill passes, disabled people will vote, right? So at the next election, when the political system is breaking down more than we've ever seen it before, um, they basically get a choice, and that's whether to get the votes of 20% of the Australian population, potentially, who are disabled people, and our friends and families, or to have those votes go somewhere else. And if you've been a historical supporter of the coalition or a crossbencher or the ALP, it's worth making it really clear in your communication that this will shift your vote. And that if they don't listen to the community, you will remember, and you will tell your friends, and that will be the consequence for them. So that's a good message there. If it's people within the agency or within government that are frightened at the moment, depending on their level of financial security, where they work, I think it is the time to have that conversation with them about what what they need if if the bill passes and people come to harm in the way that we know that they will. People will die, people will um experience incredible trauma, and they'll see that on the TV. That'll be reported. And it'll be the government's responsibility, right? The wild thing about this bill, in the way that it rips up the foundational principles of the NDIS and puts so much power in the hands of ministers in Canberra, is that every decision post this bill passing will be a government responsibility, because the minister made the rule, the government made the rule, and those people as bureaucrats will be responsible for implementing those rules. So what will they need to be able to be at peace with themselves when they see those reports? Because maybe what they will need is to have known that at the moment where it could have changed something and it could have helped, they took a risk and spoke out. It's a hard thing to ask somebody to do, but sometimes, as we saw with robo-debt, like, these things only come to light if people speak up. So I think it's about asking people to look within themselves and just consider whether, when they see those reports on the news, they will feel better or worse if right now they took a breath, found some courage, and spoke. So yeah, those are the
Can I
two things.
can I add to that? And also, if you don't feel comfortable in speaking out directly and identifying yourself, yeah, your friends and family, can speak out. They can send
Mhm.
emails, they can make phone calls, and also just know that we're all in this together. Like, our community
Oh,
is
most
really,
certainly.
really strong, and we have your back. Like, yeah, I think you all saw that Connor recently had a plan for us to $1, and the
Yeah,
community, we all got behind her, and that got fixed. And Sam's pretty high so far, and we all came out and said that's not okay, and
absolutely.
we will keep doing that.
Absolutely. And if you're talking, Sam, about people feeling uncomfortable on a personal level because they are participants not wanting to have bad things happen to them or anything like that, that is totally okay. And there are other ways you can help, as you say, friends or family members, but also if you know somebody that is comfortable making those calls or having those conversations, like reaching out to them and giving them some encouragement and support
Yeah.
so that they can do it, is a really good thing to do too.
I get
exactly.
2 showers a week, George, so it's not flipped that hard.
That is sad. Welcome. Uh, Rosa, and then Helen, and then Andrew.
Thank you, George, and thank you, Senator, for your advocacy. I'm coming from the context of working as a family support role within the education system. And up until this point, families have been empowered. We've been really working with families of Year 12 students and younger around post-school transition planning. And many of these Year 12 students have had plans built in Year 7, and they've been rolled over ever since. So these plans are not ready for adults who are leaving school. And up until the proposed changes, families have felt confident that they could request an unscheduled plan reassessment based on the significant life stage change transition of leaving school. But now families are very stressed by this one horrible word around not only reducing unscheduled plan reassessments, but that those changes need to be unanticipated. And school leaving is anticipated. So our school leavers are now feeling that, oh my goodness, are we actually not able to now request unscheduled reassessments based on the huge life stage transition because it's anticipated? Help me with this word, Senator. Unanticipated.
Well, you raised such a good point, Lisa, and this is the kind of basic thing that the government should have factored in here. And my concern is that they have looked at exactly what you're talking about and have written it precisely to prevent what you've just described. And I think that's completely outrageous, to be honest.
You think it's been missed? Or you're thinking maybe
No, I think it's
been
intentional.
intentional.
It's
Yeah.
intentional. Of course, it's intentional. They've had an obsession with this idea that there's a connection between reassessment and plan inflation, also known as situation changes, therefore people's funding level may need to change. And it's because these laws are being drafted by the Treasury. They're being driven by the Treasurer and the Finance Department, who do not see people in this system. They see ones and zeros and an amount of money that they would rather spend on nuclear submarines. And I'm being really direct there. That's what it is. And the harsher and more dehumanized they are in their thinking, the more they pat themselves on the back for being serious, hard-headed governors that are willing to make the difficult decisions. So what you're observing is it's not a kink, it's the plan. And that's why we've got to oppose the bill. But more broadly, beyond just the anticipated piece, the restriction in the ability to do to request a reassessment, like potentially locks people into really dangerous levels of underfunding. That will, like, my prediction would be this passes. If this section passes, within a year there will be a number of horrendous abuse cases, all traceable back to the fact that something went wrong. They tried to flag it. They were unable to do so, unable to raise the level of funding, and then somebody was hurt. Like, that's what will happen, because that's why the reassessment pathways were built in the way that they were in the first place. So yeah, if you're talking to those parents, I would, that they are one of the voices I am most hoping to hear from in the next 3 hearings. We've got hopefully a whole panel on education for this purpose, because of also the parental responsibility changes that have been put in. We need parents and teachers as well to reach out and talk about the impact on students, on classroom, on mums and dads across Australia. It's one of the most effective avenues to open the ears of more conservative politicians.
And I've done a submission on this exact thing already, but is there anything else we can do around highlighting this word or the risk of this unanticipated word? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Like, if you haven't already, hit social media in whatever form works for you or for them. Make as many videos about it as possible. Don't worry about the quality, just fire them off. If you can pick up the phone and send the email, definitely do that. But also look to the connections that these parents might have to their local PNCs, to their local broader community groups, to their suburban Facebook pages. Like, we just need ultimately, Lisa, best thing that we can do is bring as many people that would not initially feel connected to the NDIS or these changes, to recognize that connection and to take an action in the next 20 days, because that's when you get the exponential growth that then creates the change.
Thank you.
Thank you. Helen, and then Andy. Hello, Helen.
Hi, George. Hi, Jordan. Hi, everybody. I want to speak about, well, letting them have their nuclear submarines, but we get what we want. There's been such a big focus, and the community, I mean, the Labor Party's done a really good job in getting the work done by Redbridge and then having a thing they could sell out into the community.
Can I just check something? Hold on. I just noticed that whenever the person comes up to speak, they disappear from the screen. Is that just for me? Or is that for everyone else?
I can still see Helen, George.
Oh, okay. That's
That must
better.
must be you.
I can see you
George.
now.
It
I
could.
can see you now.
Okay, that's good.
Thanks.
So I'm just because, and I'm at the opposite end. I've got, a couple of faces. I do work independently as a support coordinator, but my primary concern is I am the sister of a man who's 46, who has Down syndrome, who
Yep.
lives in his own home on his own. We self-direct support, and now he has Alzheimer's as well as Down syndrome. So his needs are going to increase, not decrease. So keeping him safe, like he'll be one of your statistics if this bill goes through, and that's
Yep.
not happening on my watch.
Yep.
So I'm just wondering, have we, if we've got, because I see we've got to get the LNP on board. It's either the government gets things through either with the support of the Greens or with the support of the LNP. So if we get you guys singing off the one hymn sheet as you have, yeah, that's where we need to be.
Mhm.
How is there any submissions or any organisations that can address the waste? Because
Yes.
the NDIS isn't financially sustainable the way it is because it wastes so much money, but it's from within the NDIS. It's all the
Absolutely.
reports that we have to write to get a lousy piece of equipment that they don't read, that then by the time it goes through, like I've been working with someone around, a wheelchair. So they've done a report and we've got the quotes, we've done all that. By the time they look at it, they come back and the price has gone up and they want another report and you need another quote and you're going round and round in circles. So we need to address that waste. Is there a way we can do that?
Yes, we can address the waste and we can address the provider fraud, Helen. I think one of the things that the government have done so outrageously is co-opt a conversation that we have been having as disabled people from the beginning of the NDIS, which we as participants and the people who care most about the scheme have been screaming at government about the inefficiency, the duplication, the waste and the provider fraud almost from the beginning. And they've refused to do anything tangibly about that. And now have come in and go, oh, this is all about tackling fraud. But let's be really, really clear. Provider fraud is completely unacceptable. It is an abuse of people, and it must be stamped out. And the fact that this government and the previous governments in the entire life of the Quality and Safeguards Commission, for example, that they've achieved only really a handful of convictions for fraud is outrageous, and we need to see those rates.
And nothing in this bill does
anything to address
fraud.
fraud. Exactly. On the government's own admission, a maximum of 5% of the savings made by this bill in the first 4 years come from tackling fraud. The rest is from cutting the funding of people like your family members, and specifically the Down syndrome community, where the government's own impact statement says this is one of the communities that will be most affected. So we can talk to the Liberals about us being the ones that want to tackle the fraud, by putting more of the heads of these private companies in jail and doing it quicker, introducing more safeguards for those who want to report fraud and speak out about fraud when they see it through stronger whistleblower protections. We can talk about reforms to the way, and you would know this from your experience with SDA, the way that the rostering system for SDA, for SIL and SDA supports often functions in a way that has little transparency around whether the support hours claimed by the provider are actually delivered, or even that they are required to in the first place, and by supporting people to self-manage, because when you self-manage, you take responsibility for each individual invoice, and you are able to direct your dollars in a way that is most efficient, and you're incentivized to do so because it's your plan, which, to be honest with you, is a piece of knowledge, a piece of thinking that the Liberals are meant to support. Like, sometimes when I say this stuff, it feels weird as a Green because I'm advocating for, individual, choices within a free market service delivery system, which is not often something I talk about. But when you are responsible for the invoices that go in and you're on the hook if the invoices are wrong, you do take care to make sure that what you're claiming is correct. So those things together, I think, can help. The other thing I would say is that when you're talking to the Liberals, talk about small business. Talk about small business, small and medium-sized business, because if these changes come through, a lot of small and medium-sized businesses, whether they be support coordinators, plan managers, occupational therapists, allied health professionals more broadly, support workers, will lose their job because social and community participation is just 100% employment, right? Like, it's 100% employing somebody to do something. And if you cut that funding, you're cutting people's jobs. And right now, the Australia Institute doing some research on exactly how many jobs will be will be lost through these changes. But we've heard very clearly from OTs and from physiotherapists and from other allied health professions that these cuts, combined with new government regulation in the form of potentially really poorly designed registration requirements, will drive people either out of the NDIS or out of business altogether. And last time I checked, Liberals self-style themselves as supporting small business.
All right, thank you. Let's keep moving. Thanks, Helen, Angie, and then Victor, and then Sam. Angie.
Hi, hi George, hi Jordan. I have a couple of questions. Firstly, it seems that there is not a lot of mainstream public opposition to the bill. It seems to be mainly people with disabilities and advocates who are opposing the bill. And I wanted to ask how we can ensure that there is more media coverage opposing this bill.
Great question, Angie. I think we've done an incredible job in getting a level of media coverage so far. But the National Day of Action coming up on the 8th of August, I think, is another great opportunity for us to get that through attending and helping organize those rallies if possible. But also, I think I've seen some wonderful examples of people sharing their stories publicly. And this is only something that people should do if they feel comfortable, right? But, go into Instagram or TikTok or whatever platform works for you and sharing your situation right now and what these changes could mean for you is actually working to build media interest in this topic, because journalists are online too. And I had an experience of this in WA when I met with a man called Serge down in regional Western Australia, who'd experienced massive cuts to his social and community participation that threatened to prevent him from pursuing his very promising kind of career as a para-athlete. And because he shared that story with me and then was connected with his local ABC station, it actually resulted in a national media piece about not only about his experience of the cuts to date, but also what these cuts could mean in the future. So I think getting online and having, sharing that if you feel comfortable, is an effective way to do that.
Other questions I have, should we contact lower house MPs, coalition and independent MPs, or just senators?
Mostly senators, with the exception of Angus Taylor, who is obviously a lower house MP. The bill's already passed out of the lower house. So contact him, but you're contacting him because he's the leader of the Libs. But apart from that, you probably want to focus on senators.
Okay. And also, when we contact MPs, should we suggest amendments or just ask them to oppose the bill or both?
I think it's really important that we keep our message simple in as much as you're sharing your opposition to the bill and why, and that you do not believe it should pass, and why. And then that builds the maximum pressure, and then it is senators' jobs to then go off and figure out whether that's best achieved through proposing amendments or just voting down the bill. But if you get into a space where you've got to try to explain amendments and then the bill changes because the government amends it or whatever, like I think you can get into a level of complexity that just isn't useful. So the best thing to say is you oppose the bill and why, and if they don't change their bloody position, you won't vote for them, and you'll tell all your friends to vote for whoever does in fact listen to the community.
Yeah. Also, I just wanted to mention, this isn't a question, but I just wanted to mention, for some conditions, it's literally impossible to exhaust all treatments. So, for instance, I have a chronic
Yes.
pain condition, and it would take over a decade to
Yes.
trial all existing medications.
I know. Yes, it's ridiculous. Yes. So that's one of the things to say, right?
Yeah.
That's one of the things to flag, because yes, I absolutely agree. It is a ridiculous thing to potentially require somebody to do.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Andrew. Victor, and then Sam, and then Renee. Victor.
Yeah, hello, Dr. George. And,
Hello.
and the Senator. Yeah, first of all, just what Angie said, that was something I was thinking about as the public support. So I wanted to mention something on that, but also in terms of lobbying the coalition. I've just got a quote in front of me, and it comes from Senator Ruston, and it was regarding the bill that went through the Senate regarding aged care.
Mm.
And we had this comment: life-changing decisions shouldn't be left to a computer. Technology should support human decisions, not replace them. That is the principle we've put to the Parliament.
Mm-hmm.
So in my correspondence, I've only corresponded yet with one coalition senator, but I'll be doing this with the LNP senators in Queensland. I've made the point that if that's a principle, surely it's a universal principle that applies to all humans.
Yep.
And I think that given what the stand they've made against technology overriding human intervention, that in terms of what they plan to do with the ART and, of course, your temporary standard, the TSPs, that we can very strongly ram home that point, that we need to make sure that the power for review is there. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It's a useful thing to flag, Victor. I would say, though, that like what you've got there, the quote about their position on aged care, that's really useful to include. The ART review rights, those kind of things. I've tried some of those convos with Libs, and it's so far from what they usually talk or think about that it can be better, in my experience, to go straight to small business impact, impact on parents, impact, things that they are already conditioned in their broader political life to respond to and understand. Now, I'm not saying you can't include other things. You should tell your story in your words. But I think, from my experience, is most effective if you try to kind of flow the water of your experience down the pre-existing riverbed of their own kind of cultural conditioning.
Okay. Well, in this case, some of these will go to people who know me. But yeah, I get your point. But I do think in terms of the public, if we look at the threat of technology in people's human lives, that's something, and everybody understands the dangers of. So I think in public campaigning, the other thing is in terms of the NDIA and fraud, I really think people can understand a bureaucracy that's out of line. And I think of two things that highlight that the NDIA should face reform, and we should have to see that it's fit for purpose before anything else happens. So if you look at it, just 2 points make it very clear. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe in my research I saw it was either Senate estimates or in the Senate inquiry. It came out for a number of years. There was this portal between 5 and 6:30 that was open. But the other thing is, just recently, we've started to see, as the Fusion Task Force is ramping up its activities, and I think it was only founded in 2022, we're starting to see more convictions for larger scale fraud, which interestingly enough, it's easier if you're registered. And astonishingly, this is the second point I'd make to the public, just 2 quick points that show that they need reform. They're the biggest thing leaving the NDIS open to fraud has been the failure of the systems of the NDI itself. They're the most to blame. And as you know, I think we had someone jailed just the start of this month, the 3rd, I believe.
Yeah.
And then we're starting to see convictions for millions. There are 2 before the courts for 5 million each of former NDIA employees. They didn't just fraud the system, they harmed participants. So there's a strong case to be put that the NDIA, before we do anything else, it's so incompetent, it hasn't even been able to protect its own systems. So
I agree. Thanks, Victor.
yeah, I just wanted to finally to let me congratulate you. Yeah, because you're not somebody I've normally supported, but on this you've been exemplary.
Thank you.
And I've actually have been telling LNP, like, I'll probably get expelled eventually because if this bill passed, I won't. There's, like Winston Churchill said, you can go against your opinions if you're in a party, but you must never go against your conscience. And I have actually, and I will be, and I am saying quite vocally that if you pass this bill, giving all that you know it's wrong with it, how on earth do I look, because I'm a parent of a child with a strong disability, how on earth do I look my daughter in the eye? How do I look my family in the eye if you pass this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well said.
Well said, Victor, and good on you.
Yeah. Sam Connor. Who's Sam Connor? There's someone called Sam Connor on the line. Hello, Sam.
Hello, Dr. George. Hello, Senator, and EAC. I just want to say thank you so much to EAC for holding this because it's community getting together that stops us being in despair. So thank you so much for doing this. But also, there's so many things. I think the inquiry, all of the stories are dropping now, and the inquiry has made all of this very, very apparent, So the things that were the technical parts of the bill, like the clawing back of money from, and people not being able to, having their supports have to drop to the door of hospitals and that kind of thing, and people's plans that are being cut. So my $1 plan has been given to me. I've got a new plan now in magical time because I'm shouty, but it's about a quarter of the plan that I had before. It gives me 5 hours a week of support, and that means 2 showers a week. And it gives me, because I'm special, they told me, I get 3 hours of social and community participation, which I used to pay a participant at the, because I'm self-managed again, by the way, at the conference on Tuesday. And I think I've used up all my support this week. How's that? I've got no consumables budget as a wheelchair user. And so my tire is about to pop. And instead of paying for it because I have no money, I'm just going to just like wait till it pops. And hopefully it won't be in the middle of the road like we're playing Frogger. But, it makes great things when I get killed. So please make sure you martyr me. But this is what they're doing to people. So everyone who's getting a new plan is getting it slashed by a squillion dollars. And we're also being told that we have to go off and get a new functional capacity assessment if you haven't had lots of recent ones. I've had no contact with the NDIA for 6 years. And so anybody who's in that boat will be in the same boat. And I think these are really things we can use, although they're terrible and hilarious, they're things we can use to take to media and go, oh, look, we're back to the days when we had to go to the shop and buy a bottle of water and get them to pour it into our mouth so we could stay hydrated. We're back to the days of asking strangers in servos to do it at the back of your dress, like I did with the Uber guy the other day. We're back to the days of 80-year-old carers having to wipe their kids' asses when their kid doesn't want their mum to be their, care and support because there's no dignity in all rights in that. So I think
Yeah.
we've got some really powerful things behind us, shit as they are. And 20 days, I reckon we've got time to smash it. So thank you
Yeah.
for holding this.
And I think, Sam, I think, first of all, I'll just flag, I probably only have time to take one more question after this, and then I'll have to go. I'm sorry, folks. I've got to go into my next meeting. But look, I just want to say, Sam, your point there about the way in which what we're experiencing right now and highlighting it can be helpful is so useful. Like my belief is that the agency is already implementing these changes actually in anticipation of the legislation passing. Your plan being cut to $1 is as much evidence I think as we could ever need, because that's in line with the legislative the part of the act that says it can be cut. The minister can make a cut no larger than 99.99%. Or no larger than 100%, leaving the maximum cut 99.99%, and that's why you got $1. So they're already doing it, and I think we need to share it now. And I hope your wheel doesn't burst. But if it does, and if you're not in the middle of the road, I hope the first thing you do is go live on Facebook and be like, right, my tire just went, and I've got no consumables in my plan. What does Labour think I do now? Like, what am I meant to do now?
Exactly right.
That's the critical question. But I'll take the question I think from Renee, and then I'll have to go.
Yeah, thanks everyone, and thank you for your time. Look, I'm impassioned about everything that's been said here today, but I'm going to just really focus on my little area. Senator, with the economic social participation budget, I note that there's a deathly silence about employment. So, you know, I know that the supported employment providers are really speaking up about this, because this is, you know, quite imperative to their operations. However, being in the employment space, this is a really critical budget. It was a big win for us when economic participation was considered in the core budget, because there's so many correlations between the social element of employment, then the daily living and the support that someone needs to get to their job, whether they need ongoing support in the job or not. There's still these peripheral elements of that employment. We just have no idea, and no one's talking about the impact that these peripheral cuts are also going to have on the economic participation that people struggle with as well. And so I just, yeah, I'm in this space. I don't know what to do, because it's just deathly silent. So I'm just writing and writing and writing and talking to as many people as. Have you got any insights?
Well, I think so. First of all, I would say it's so important for us all to recognize that for the last 5 years, our federal government, using our tax dollars, has funded research and then amplified the results of that research with one goal, and that is to persuade the Australian community that we as disabled people receiving the supports, the basic essential supports we need to live, is just too much of a burden, that we are the burden, and that it's time to be hard-hearted and sensible, and you know, and address the fact that it's a burden, and you know, it's going to hurt you, but it's going to hurt me more. That kind of it's the language of the abuser, quite frankly, and that's what they've done. And so we all, to some extent, have taken that into ourselves, and even I find myself sometimes talking about, you know, the unsustainability of the NDIS. It's so important to remember that for every dollar that's invested, no matter how much the scheme costs, the research we have, and we should have more research. I've been begging the government for years to do more research, but the research that does exist says that for every dollar that's invested, $2.25 is generated in economic activity. That is disabled people in work, that is support workers in work, that is people spending money at Australian businesses. Therefore, the NDIS is not too much money. It's not too much of a burden. It's not. It's an economic good. It is responsible for one of the only areas of the broader Australian economy that is still doing well, which is something known as the social care and support sector. Between 2022 and 2026, 82% of all jobs, new jobs created in the Australian economy, were public sector, were the result of public money being spent, with the largest chunk of that money, largest chunk of that employment coming from the NDIS and social care sector. We're the engine room of the economy, and the government have decided to put a spanner in that engine because they want the money in the short term to give to Donald Trump. And that is absolutely cooked. But we should remember that, like, we don't need to apologize for ourselves economically or for any other reason. And employment's a big part of that. That money that they're cutting not only employs a support worker, it supports the disabled person to take the actions to get the job, keep the job, get a better job. What can we do? It is about activating the people in your networks to make those phone calls, send those emails, put those posts online. Because in 20 days' time, if the bill passes in that week afterwards, all power, and I want to be very blunt here, all power is transferred from the disabled person to the minister in Canberra. Everything that matters goes in that direction, with no exception. You know, if it's important, if it makes an impact, it's going into his hands forever. Done. So now is the time. That 20-day period is critical, either to get the bill chucked in the bin, get it heavily amended, get it further delayed. Like, and then, you know, this is the moment that we're in. And if they refuse and if they push through, that what they are depending on us to do in that moment is then collapse in a heap of fear and hopelessness. And what we must remember at that moment is that though they've stripped our funding, they haven't stripped our right to vote. And we must inflict consequence at the ballot box and return a parliament then that will restore our rights and the supports that we need. As long as we have the power to vote, we are never without the power to create change. But what I don't want to see is people die between now and then. And that's what I've got to try and bill. But with that said, I've got to love you and leave you, folks. But thank you so much.
Jordan, thank you for everything you do. Thank you for your incredible advocacy, your tireless effort and work for our community. We see it, we appreciate it. It means the world to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Go well, everybody, and I look forward to getting on the battlements with you in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you. We'll keep going with the questions, and I'll just ask maybe if Ross and Vera want to come back, or any of our other committee members, and also answer some questions. We can do that. Tanya Carroll, hello.
Hi George, how are you? Hi Ross.
Good.
Hang on. I'm someone who's born with a severe intellectual disability. Like, I was born like this. I never asked to be born into the neurological birth defect or acquired brain injury world. But with the way the NDIS is saying that we need to be reassessed, I've got also two rare genetic brain disorders. I've also have a permanent death on my left. How in the effing hell am I supposed to be, if I get reassessed? Like, I've been doing what I've been doing. Yes, I did have block funding before I got on the NDIS, but the NDIS is making people's life more easier and better within themselves.
That's
And they all, but they also, like, I do when with me as a participant, I always use my NDIS funds to do things like going to certain conferences within my disability, with my acquired brain injury and mental health that, you know, I've been dealing with since that day dot. But why are we getting picked on? Because yes, we've got all different levels of capacity, we've got all different levels of challenges. Why can't they see for who we are?
I think you nailed it, Tanya, and I think this is the message that we need to be sending to the members of Parliament and to Angus Taylor, like Jordan said. Put that in a phone call, in an email. It's such an important message. Thanks, Tanya.
We should not be going back to the dark ages. This is not the 50s and 60s no more. Or 80s. This is 2026. Sorry, guys.
No, thank you. And thanks for everything that you do. Catherine and then Heidi, and then Christine, I think will be our last person. We'll just see how we go for time. Catherine? Are you there, Catherine? Okay, we'll go to Heidi then. Heidi?
So yeah, thank you. So I don't know how to type this one.
Oh, it's hello, Sarah.
Oh.
Oh,
Kendra.
Is it going? No. Yeah. Okay.
please go ahead.
Yes. Oh right. Sorry, I thought you couldn't hear me. So just to something I'm hearing a lot from people, and we've had a lot of people ask this question, and I've noticed a lot of energy being used with people going around in circles trying to figure out like why this is happening, and it's using up a lot of people's emotional resources. A sort of like dissonance of like why.
Oh, okay. Big off. Maybe we'll just check with Catherine. Are you still there? No.
Sorry.
Oh, who's that?
What's happened?
Okay, you're back.
Yeah, sorry, the internet. Sorry, the internet kicked me off.
It's okay. Please keep speaking.
Thank you, George. I'll try to be really brief, but I've spent a lot of time, as people know, we Emperor super uber nerds who spend a lot of time looking at patterns and the ins and outs and the whys and the wherefores. And I guess where I've concluded, and I don't know if it helps people, it's helped me. I got really stuck for a long time in also trying to figure out why. As an autistic person, I spent a lot of my time trying to figure out why things happen. It is very important to me to understand that. And it's a big part of how I cope with life, is trying to seek information, trying to pull it apart, and it helps me navigate life. And when I don't understand why something's happening, it can be really distressing. And I hear that distress. I'm hearing and seeing that distress in the disability community around me constantly, not understanding why it's happening. So this is just my thoughts and where I've come to after a lot of time looking at it all, is that people are right when they say it doesn't make sense because it's going to cost more in the long term. And people are also right when they say it's so horrific and it's going to kill a lot of people. We can't, stop it or reduce harm. But I think the thing where I've come to, and that's helped me move on from that point of spinning my wheels, is to realize that the most obvious thing is that this isn't about money, really. It's not even about votes, elections, or anything else. It's actually just about power, and it's about who has control, I think. And I think the biggest thing that happened with the NDIS bill is that disabled people had choice and control for the first time really, the first real choice and control. We had power over our own lives. And that is what I think I think that's the purpose. It is about shifting power away from the individual and us and back to the government. And so I think it's given me peace to realize that it does make sense. It does make sense when you look at it that way, because that was the biggest change. And so I think if we can find a way to make sense of it in our brains and realize, oh, actually, when you think that it's about power and control, it all makes sense. And I think that's good because it can stop you using up your energy wondering why. It's helped me. I just wanted to share that. I did have a question.
Can
I
I
have
just
one
say something
question.
about that?
Yes, please.
What you just said with us is really important in the context of our advocacy, because
Yes.
the Liberal Party and the coalition and people who are that side of politics, they are all about power to the individual. That is a key message. So that is something that you can use in your advocacy to the Angus Taylors and to the coalition. I think that was very helpful. And conscious of the time, can you make your question brief just so we can get captured and then we're going to have to wrap up?
Yes, of course. I wanted to ask a question, and it's pretty direct, I suppose. This is actually just what I personally want to know, but I know I've had a lot of Emporites ask this too. There's been quotes passed around, and people have said things like saying the bill will pass. The bill is definitely going to pass. I've heard this, and I know I went into a pretty black hole when I heard that. I've heard that from a few people. So I guess I just wanted to get your view, and I guess other people's view is where are we at with that, and do we feel there is hope? And could you expand on that? Because I know for me, I don't like wasting my time and energy. And if we should be thinking about reducing harm, or is there actually still hope that we can block the absolute worst parts of it? Like, how much hope is there? I know that's sort of a hard question to answer, but that's sort of something I've been thinking about a lot the last week.
I love hard questions, so thank you. I think that our community has shown time and time again how powerful we can be when we all come together united and when we are very, very clear that people will be harmed and that there's some seriously dangerous consequences if the bill gets passed. I think that we can affect this bill. I think that we already have, and that we will keep doing everything that we can. And then, whatever the outcome, we will know that we did everything that we could do. That is all we can expect of ourselves. That we did everything that we could do. So that's my feeling. Ross, would you like to add to that?
Sure, John. Yeah, I'll jump in and say absolutely. I think we're all absolutely committed on the steering committee, and we know that the EAC supporting communities behind all of that as well. We're not stopping, and we're going to push even harder over the next few weeks to really get that messaging across. So we haven't given up, and I think there's a good chance to get some really solid amendments at the worst case scenario. I'd like to see it stopped. Worst case scenario, it goes through, but we should be able to get significant amendments still to the bill. And I can say that I believe that Butler's office and Albanese's office are running in a bit of damage control over the whole thing now anyway. I don't think they expected as much of an uproar over that. So I think we made some good inroads.
That's right, thank you. And I'll just check if Catherine, is your microphone working now?
Hi, George.
Hi.
Apologies for technical difficulties, one of those things that happen. I just wanted to say hello to everyone and look, as a community together, we're strong as one voice and keep fighting people, don't give up. But particularly, I wanted to draw attention to something that Jordan mentioned earlier that I think the community need to be aware of. I'm a carer of 2 disabled adult sons. I was contacted by the NDIA out of the blue, not last week, the week before, under the guise of, we're going to have a quick catch up about one of your sons. I then received an email to confirm that. I received the phone call, which started off as a general nicety, and then by the questions that were asked immediately following that nicety, I could see this was a plan review on the spot. When I then asked the planner, are you conducting a plan review? He said yes. And I said to him, you cannot do this without notification that you're going to conduct a plan review. Under the Act, you have to give me notice that you're going to do it. He became aggressive. He became really, really determined to push through about the fact that this plan review was going to take place. I became very distressed, and I'm a strong, independent, intelligent person who can articulate my needs exceptionally well. But my concern is, how many people in the community is this happening to who don't have someone to advocate for them, who don't have a strong voice to argue against it and ensure that their rights are being heard? Long story short, I've got a 6-plan extension before this review will take place now, after a lot of screaming and threats to go to the minister, albeit we know he wouldn't be very helpful, but the ombudsman as well. My concern is, after this screaming match with him, a week after that, I received a letter that was backdated 3 weeks prior to that date, and on it, it maintained that my son had contacted the NDIA requesting a review. Now that is an out and out lie. My son is not capable of doing that. So I just wanted to bring this to the community's attention, that what Jordan mentioned earlier about he thinks that what they're planning for with the bill with these reviews is happening now, guys. You need to be aware of it. So if you receive a phone call, you get an email under the guise of, we're just checking in. These people are doing a plan review, and his words to me from this planner were, your son's funding is being cut to nothing, to the minimal amount possible, which, as I heard earlier, could very much be $1. So it's just putting that message out to make people aware it's happening now, guys.
Catherine, thank you for saying that. I'm so sorry this has happened to you. I think that the agency has a lot to answer for on that. If you want to message us directly, Nick and I have regular meetings with the agency, and we'd be happy to raise that and ensure that the officials can find out what went wrong in that situation. Info at everyaustraliancounts.com.au. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. I'm sorry that we can't take any further questions. Please go to our Google. There's that website address, also a QR code. Call the Angus Taylor contact details as well. Email, tell your friends and your family to do the same. And thank you so much for your time and for doing everything that you do to advocate for our community. That's all we have time for. We will see you next time. Bye for now.